she wasn't an Israelite. She belonged to a family that had made peace with Israel's enemies, living in a tent on neutral ground while a war raged around her that, by every political calculation, had nothing to do with her at all. No one commanded her to act. No prophet sent her a message. No army assigned her a role. She simply found herself alone in her tent with the most feared general in the region asleep at her feet. And she made a decision that would be remembered for thousands of years, sung about in one of the oldest poems in all of Scripture. Her name was Jael, and this isn't a story about a soldier winning a battle. It's a story about how victory sometimes comes from the most unexpected hands, in the most unexpected places, through methods no general would have planned and no army could have executed. It is also one of the shortest, strangest accounts of deliverance in the entire Old Testament, just a handful of verses. And yet it has unsettled and fascinated readers for thousands of years, precisely because of how quietly, how domestically, the most decisive moment of the entire war unfolds. In the days of the judges, after Israel had settled the Promised Land, but long before any king sat on a throne, the people fell again into disobedience, and the Lord allowed them to be oppressed by Jabin, a king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. Jabin's military strength rested largely on his commander, a man named Sisera, who commanded 900 iron chariots, a force so technologically advanced for its time that it terrorized the Israelite tribes for 20 years, since chariots of iron were nearly unstoppable against foot soldiers fighting in the hill country with little more than farming tools and simple weapons. The Israelites cried out to the Lord for help, exhausted by 2 decades of cruel oppression with no end in sight. At that time, a woman named Deborah, a prophetess, was leading Israel as a judge, the only woman among the judges recorded in Scripture. And people came from all over the land to bring their disputes to her as she sat under a palm tree between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, a position of remarkable authority for a woman in that era, earned not through lineage or marriage, but through the people's recognition of the wisdom and the word of the Lord that rested on her. Deborah sent for a man named Barak from Kadesh in Naphtali and relayed a command she said came directly from the Lord. Go, take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun and lead them up to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River and give him into your hands. It was a clear, specific promise of victory, exactly the kind of word a commander might hope to hear before facing an army equipped with 900 iron chariots, a force that would have seemed, by any rational military assessment of the time, nearly impossible to overcome with foot soldiers alone. But Barak hesitated, telling Deborah, "If you go with me, I will go, but if you don't go with me, I won't go." An answer that revealed either a deep reliance on Deborah's spiritual authority as confirmation of the Lord's promise, or a reluctance to commit fully to a battle he still privately doubted he could win without her presence beside him. Deborah agreed to accompany him, but she added a pointed warning that would shape the rest of the story. "Because of the course you are taking, the honor will not be yours, for the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman." Neither Deborah nor Barak knew yet which woman would receive that honor. But the prophecy was set in motion from that moment forward, hanging over the entire campaign as an open question waiting to be answered, a thread the listener is left to track all the way to its surprising conclusion. Barak gathered his 10,000 men at Mount Tabor as instructed, and when Sisera was told that Barak had mobilized his forces, he summoned all 900 of his iron chariots and all the men with him, marching them toward the Kishon River, fully confident in the overwhelming technological and numerical advantage his army held over a relatively small force of Israelite foot soldiers gathered on a hillside, an advantage that, on paper, should have made the outcome of the coming battle a foregone conclusion. Deborah gave the order at the decisive moment. "Go! This is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you?" Barak led his men down from Mount Tabor, and the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and army by the sword before Barak. The chariots that had terrorized Israel for 2 decades, suddenly rendered useless, likely bogged down in mud as a sudden storm, hinted at poetically in the victory song that followed, turned the dry riverbed of the Kishon into a swamp that swallowed wheels and horses alike, the very technology that had made Sisera's army so feared becoming, in a matter of moments, the cause of its complete undoing. Sisera abandoned his chariot and fled on foot, a stunning reversal for a commander who had built his entire reputation on the speed and power of his iron war machines. Now reduced to running for his life across open country with nothing but his own legs to carry him away from a battlefield that had completely collapsed beneath him. His 900 chariots scattered and broken behind him while the army he had commanded just hours earlier was cut down by the very foot soldiers he had so thoroughly underestimated. Sisera's flight took him toward the tent of Heber the Kenite, since there was peace between Jabin king of Hazor and the family of Heber, a political arrangement that made Heber's camp seem like safe, neutral ground for a fleeing general desperate to escape Israelite pursuit. He had no reason to suspect danger there, no reason to think that the household he was running toward held anything other than the protection his alliance with Jabin was supposed to guarantee. Jael, Heber's wife, came out to meet Sisera and said, "Come, my lord, come right in. Don't be afraid." Whatever her true intentions were from that very first moment, her words gave Sisera every reason to believe he had found safe refuge at last, an assurance reinforced by every customary signal of hospitality a fleeing man in that culture would have known how to read. So he entered her tent, and she covered him with a blanket, the kind of hospitality that, in the customs of the ancient Near East, carried serious obligations of protection for the guest who had been welcomed inside. Obligations so deeply ingrained that violating them was considered a grave breach of honor in nearly every culture across the region. Sisera, exhausted from battle and from running, said to her, "I'm thirsty, please give me some water." Jael went further than what he asked, opening a skin of milk, giving him a drink, and covering him again, small gestures of comfort that would have done nothing but deepen his confidence that he had found a genuinely safe place to recover before continuing his escape, the rich, calming drink likely hastening the exhaustion already pulling at him after hours of fighting and fleeing. Sisera then said to her, "Stand in the doorway of the tent. If someone comes by and asks you, 'Is anyone in there?' say, 'No.'" It was a request born of total trust, the instruction of a man who believed completely that the woman standing guard over him intended to protect his life exactly as her hospitality had so far suggested. A final command given by a man too depleted to consider that the very person he was trusting might already be planning something else entirely. Exhausted beyond resistance, Sisera fell into a deep sleep, the kind of sleep that comes only after total physical and emotional collapse, the adrenaline of battle and flight finally giving way to the body's desperate need for rest. But Jael, Heber's wife, picked up a tent peg and a hammer and went quietly to him, since he was lying there fast asleep, exhausted, and she drove the peg through his temple into the ground. And he died. It was an act carried out with the same domestic tools she used every day to set up and secure her own tent. Ordinary instruments of household life turned in a single decisive moment into the means of ending the campaign that had terrorized Israel for 2 decades. There was no battle here, no contest of strength, only a quiet tent, a sleeping man who trusted the woman sheltering him completely, and a single irreversible act carried out in total silence while he slept. Just then Barak came by in pursuit of Sisera, and Jael went out to meet him and said, "Come, I will show you the man you're looking for." So he went in with her, and there lay Sisera with the tent peg through his temple, dead. The commander who had eluded an entire Israelite army on foot, who had run far enough and fast enough to escape 10,000 pursuing soldiers, had been stopped not on the battlefield but inside a woman's tent by a woman's hand, exactly as Deborah had prophesied before the battle ever began. That the Lord would deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman rather than into Barak's own. On that day, Scripture records, God subdued Jabin, the Canaanite king, before the Israelites, and the hand of the Israelites pressed harder and harder against Jabin until they destroyed him entirely, ending 20 years of oppression in a single decisive campaign that began on a battlefield and ended inside a tent. Deborah and Barak together sang a song that day, recorded in the very next chapter of Judges, one of the oldest pieces of poetry preserved in the entire Hebrew Bible, scholars often dating its language to a period even earlier than much of the surrounding narrative prose. A testament to how quickly and how permanently this victory was committed to memory by the people who lived through it. Within that song, Jael receives extraordinary praise. Most blessed of women be Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, most blessed of tent-dwelling women. He asked for water, and she gave him milk. In a bowl fit for nobles, she brought him curdled milk. Her hand reached for the tent peg, her right hand for the workman's hammer. She struck Sisera, she crushed his head, she shattered and pierced his temple. At her feet he sank, he fell. There he lay. At her feet he sank, he fell. Where he sank, there he fell, dead. The song does not soften or hide what Jael did. It celebrates it openly, lingering over the physical details with an almost startling bluntness, placing her alongside Deborah herself as a hero of that day's deliverance, 2 women credited by name in a culture and a text that rarely centered women so prominently in its accounts of military victory. The song goes on to imagine with biting irony Sisera's own mother waiting at a window for her son's return, wondering aloud to her attendants why his chariots are so long in coming, speculating that he must be delayed only because the spoils of victory, women and dyed garments and embroidered cloth, are taking so long to divide among the troops. A mother's hopeful imagination painted in stark, tragic contrast to the reality the listener already knows, that her son would never return at all, that his chariots had been swallowed by mud and his life ended by a tent peg in the hands of a woman he had trusted completely. It is one of the most haunting juxtapositions in the entire poem, victory and grief held side by side, the celebrating women of Israel and the unknowingly grieving mother of Canaan, both imagined in the same breath of song. Jael's story raises questions that have been debated for centuries. She belonged to a household at peace with Sisera's king, which meant Sisera had every reasonable expectation of safety when he entered her tent, an expectation rooted in real political alliances and the deep cultural weight ancient hospitality customs carried, customs that obligated a host to protect, not harm, the guest who had crossed their threshold. Jael's welcome, her milk, her blanket, all of it built a foundation of trust that she then used, deliberately and without any apparent hesitation recorded in the text, to deliver a fatal blow to a sleeping, defenseless man. It was not a fair fight, not a contest of arms, and not the kind of victory a soldier might have claimed with pride on an open battlefield. Some readers across the centuries have wrestled openly with the ethics of what she did. troubled by the deception involved, by the violation of hospitality customs so deeply embedded in that ancient world, by the fact that her victim was utterly defenseless and entirely unaware of the danger he was in. And yet Scripture does not condemn her for the method. It commemorates her, weaving her name permanently into the song that Israel sang in celebration of one of its greatest deliverances, treating her decisive, solitary action as every bit as significant as the 10,000 soldiers who fought at Mount Tabor under Barak's command. A striking choice in a text that rarely elevates the actions of outsiders, let alone outsider women, above the achievements of an entire army. Perhaps that is precisely the point the story is making, that deliverance does not always arrive through the channels people expect, through armies and commanders and carefully planned campaigns, but sometimes through someone standing completely outside the official conflict altogether. A woman in a tent with no rank, no army, and no obligation to act at all, who simply recognized the moment in front of her and chose, with whatever tools were already in her hands, to end it. Jael's story reminds us that courage and consequence don't always look like what we expect them to look like, that the most ordinary tools, a tent peg, a hammer, a bowl of milk, can become instruments of extraordinary significance in the right hands at the right moment, and that the line between hospitality and reckoning can sometimes be thinner than anyone watching from outside the tent could have imagined. Deborah had prophesied that the honor of that day would not belong to Barak, but to a woman, and history would record that the prophecy was fulfilled not once, but twice over, first in the leadership of Deborah herself, who summoned an army and spoke the word of the Lord with unwavering confidence, and then in the most unexpected place imaginable, inside the quiet, ordinary tent of a woman who had no obvious reason to be remembered at all, and who, in the space of a single decisive act, became one of the most unforgettable figures in the entire account of Israel's deliverance.